So imagine you're taking your morning vitamin,
Well,
or maybe you're rubbing like a new hydration serum into your skin. You trust the glossy label.
of course you do.
You just assume absolute certainty. But what if I told you the invisible white powder inside that capsule changed hands 12 times, crossed 3 oceans, and, well, might have been quietly swapped out for a cheaper, potentially dangerous ingredient just last week?
It completely shatters the illusion, doesn't it?
It really does.
We like to think it's this simple, straightforward journey, from the earth directly to our hands. But the reality is a massive, high-stakes, and honestly, largely invisible machinery operating just out of sight.
And pulling back the curtain on that machinery is exactly what we're doing today. Welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
We are exploring the hidden supply chain behind the vitamins, the skincare, and the wellness goods that you consume every single day.
And the stakes here are, they're astronomical. Building trust with a consumer takes years of flawless execution.
Right.
But losing that trust, that takes only one bad batch.
Exactly. So to ground our conversation today, we are pulling insights from a brilliantly comprehensive buyer's guide.
It's a fantastic resource.
It is. It's titled Wholesale Health Products, a comprehensive buyer's guide to sourcing safe, high-quality wellness goods. This was published on March 13th, 2026 by Laurent Fabian, who is the founder of Ingredientsage.
Right.
Our mission today is to extract the ultimate framework for how B2B operators and consumer brands source products safely, navigate incredibly strict regulations, and ultimately protect their brand equity.
Which is knowledge that genuinely applies across the board.
Absolutely. Whether you are an aspiring entrepreneur dreaming of launching your own direct-to-consumer wellness brand, or, a professional prepping for a high-level supply chain meeting,
Yeah.
or simply a curious consumer wondering why one vitamin brand costs $40 and another costs $4, this deep dive will completely change how you look at a drugstore shelf. Okay, let's unpack this.
The best place to start is really at the absolute beginning.
Right, before anything is even made.
Exactly. Before a product ever gets into a bottle or a box or onto a shelf, you have to find someone to actually make it.
Which sounds easy, but it's not.
No, not at all. And the most glaring takeaway from our research is that picking a supplier based solely on the cheapest unit price is a guaranteed path to disaster.
You cannot just, blast out an email, get the lowest quote, and start manufacturing.
Right.
The guide stresses that you have to use a supplier due diligence framework.
Yes.
This means moving way past a simple one-time questionnaire where you just, cross your fingers and hope the factory doesn't lie to you.
Because they might. You need a multi-tier diligence process.
Right, like virtual tours and on-site audits.
Exactly. And demanding at least 3 reference checks from their current customers. Plus, implementing a risk-adjusted sampling plan.
Let's pause on that risk-adjusted sampling plan for a second.
Yeah, because that is where the real strategy lies.
So I assume that means if a factory has been flawless for 5 years, you don't audit them as aggressively as, say, the new facility that just had a suspended operating license.
You nailed it. It's about allocating your compliance budget where the fire is most likely to start.
That makes total sense.
High-risk suppliers receive incredibly robust testing and surveillance. Low-risk partners, well, they might have a leaner oversight regime.
Right.
But crucially, each stage needs objective pass or fail criteria and a documented rationale.
Because early detection is everything.
Exactly. A minor manufacturing finding early on can cascade into a multi-million-dollar recall later.
And to track all of this, the text says brands build what is called a living supplier dossier. I totally love this concept.
It's super effective.
It combines objective data, like their facility size, their financial stability, their licensing history, with subjective indicators.
Like their overall mindset toward continuous quality improvement.
Right. It almost sounds like you're stalking your supplier, but, for quality assurance.
It really does. But it is a continuously evolving record. You are never flying blind.
Which is huge. And that brings up a concept that completely shifted my perspective. Total cost of ownership, or TCO.
Oh, yeah. This is vital.
If you only look at the unit price per bottle, you are walking into a trap.
A massive trap.
Because TCO means calculating procurement, QA testing, storage, shipping, regulatory compliance, waste, and the potential cost of recalls.
It fundamentally changes the math.
It's like buying a cheap used car.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. The upfront sticker price is incredibly low, so you think you got a steal.
But then the reality hits.
Exactly. The TCO, the constant maintenance, the blown transmission, the terrible gas mileage, It ruins you in the end.
Yeah.
Focusing only on the lowest manufacturing quote is the exact same dynamic. But I have to push back a little here.
Okay, go for it.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of a smaller startup brand. Is it really feasible to do all this intense auditing, risk-adjusted sampling, and living dossier building? I mean, it sounds like you need an army of compliance officers before you even sell your first bottle.
What's fascinating here is that doing this heavy lifting up front actually saves an immense amount of time and resources down the line.
Wait, really? How?
Because a dynamic supplier dossier is the absolute backbone of risk-based sourcing. The Industry Regulatory Council in the text points this out explicitly.
Oh, okay.
By applying a supplier scorecard with just, say, 5 to 7 objective metrics and using a decision tree data set for go or no-go selections.
You remove all the emotional guesswork from the process.
Exactly.
So building the strict structure is actually the shortcut.
It buys you operational freedom.
Yeah.
When you have this deep data-driven understanding of the relationship, you unlock value-based sourcing.
Which means what, practically?
It means you can leverage your dossier to negotiate flexible MOQ's minimum order quantities. And those are tied directly to your specific forecast accuracy. Plus, you can secure favorable payment terms.
Like what?
Like net 45 or net 60.
Meaning you don't have to pay the supplier until 45 or 60 days after receiving the goods.
Exactly. And that frees up massive amounts of cash flow for a startup.
Okay, that makes total sense. So you've thoroughly vetted the supplier, you've built your living dossier, and negotiated great terms.
Right.
But that leads us to the next massive hurdle.
Quality assurance.
Yes. How do you verify that the actual stuff going into the bottles, the raw powder, the active serum, the botanical liquid, is actually what the supplier claims it is?
You rely on the science of certainty.
And that sounds expensive.
It requires a highly structured 3-tier quality assurance release framework. You establish 3 separate, rigid checkpoints before a product ever leaves the building.
Let's walk through what those actually look like on the factory floor.
Sure. So, Tier 1 is the material release. Before a single grain of powder enters the mixing vats, you confirm the identity and specifications of the raw materials.
Okay, got it.
Tier 2 consists of in-process release checkpoints.
Meaning you check it while it's being made.
Exactly. This means monitoring critical quality attributes during production, like checking the viscosity of a serum while it's actively blending.
Right.
And then Tier 3 is the finished goods release.
Verifying that the final sealed batch meets every single specification before it gets loaded onto a truck.
Precisely. And obviously, you can't just take the supplier's word for it.
No, of course not.
Independent, third-party testing is non-negotiable here.
Because you are testing for identity and potency, right? Like ensuring the vitamin C is actually vitamin C.
Yes, but you are also testing for contaminants.
Which is terrifying.
It is. You are hunting for pesticides, heavy metals, and microbial limits.
Like yeast and mold. Yuck.
Yeah, exactly. Because the regulatory expectations backing this up are severe. If you are dealing with dietary supplements in the U.S., you are bound by 21 CFR Part 111.
That is the FDA's current Good Manufacturing Practice, or CGMP, right?
Exactly. It dictates mandatory standards for cleanliness, handling, process controls, and documentation.
And then there is DSHEA, the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act.
Yes, that's a big
You
one.
have to unpack this because it is absolutely vital for understanding the whole industry.
It really is the foundation.
Under DSHEA, the FDA doesn't test and approve supplements before they go to market, the way they do with prescription pharmaceuticals.
Right. The burden of proof is entirely on the brand to substantiate their health claims and ensure safety.
Which is a huge responsibility.
Which is why you need rigorous certificates of analysis, or COAs, for every single batch.
And a proper COA isn't just like a piece of paper that says pass.
Oh, definitely not. It must feature specific lot numbers, clear methodology descriptions explaining how the test was run, and specific detection limits.
Now, to manage all of this, the guide mentions brands use supplier quality agreements to formalize expectations.
Specifically regarding change control processes.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's say a manufacturer is blending a protein powder for you,
Okay.
and without telling you, they silently swap out one completely innocuous raw ingredient for a slightly cheaper alternative, just to save a few cents per unit.
Happens all the time.
But if the new ingredient isn't toxic, is that really a crisis?
An undocumented change like that is a catastrophic threat.
Really?
Yep.
Even if it's not toxic?
Yes, it goes far beyond toxicity. Think about the strict allergen labeling rules brands have to navigate.
Oh, right.
The FDA requires incredibly specific, prominent labeling for major food allergens. We're talking dairy, soy, peanuts, tree nuts.
Gluten, shellfish, eggs, and sesame.
Exactly.
Ah, I see. So if the supplier silently swaps an ingredient, they might be introducing a hidden allergen.
Imagine that cheaper alternative ingredient was processed on shared equipment with, say, soy or sesame.
And your label doesn't declare it because you literally didn't know about the change.
Exactly. Then a consumer with a severe sesame allergy drinks your protein shake and ends up in the emergency room.
Oh, wow. That's terrifying.
That is a devastating human cost.
Yeah.
And it's followed immediately by aggressive regulatory enforcement and the total destruction of consumer trust.
Which is why a robust change control process requires risk assessments and updated COAs for any formulation shift, no matter how microscopically small.
Yes, you have to know everything.
Wow. The stakes are literally life and death. Okay, so we've sourced it brilliantly. We've tested it relentlessly.
Great.
But as anyone who has ever run a business knows, the real world is pure chaos.
It always is.
Ports close unexpectedly. Raw materials run out due to a bad harvest. Machinery breaks.
Yep.
How do these brands survive when the inevitable disaster strikes?
They survive because they've already prepared for the worst by building a risk register.
A risk register. What exactly goes into that?
It's a formal, living catalog of potential threats. You aren't just making a list of bad things. You are actively scoring their likelihood and their potential impact.
So you track things like supply disruptions and sudden regulatory shifts.
Exactly. Along with quality control failures and even supplier insolvency.
Supplier insolvency, meaning your manufacturing partner suddenly goes bankrupt, the gates are padlocked, and your product ceases to exist.
It's a nightmare scenario, and you have to have a backup plan ready.
Right.
You assign owners to these specific risks, create mitigation actions, and set target dates. And when something does go wrong, say, a shipment of gummy vitamins melts in transit.
Which sounds like a sticky mess.
It is. When that happens, you deploy CAPE, corrective and preventive actions.
Break down how CEPA actually works in a scenario like the melted gummies.
First, you conduct a root cause analysis.
Okay.
Did the gummies melt because the formulation was unstable or because the shipping container sat on a hot tarmac for 3 days?
Let's assume the hot tarmac.
Right. Once you identify that root cause, you create an action plan. You mandate temperature-controlled shipping routes for all future summer deliveries.
Makes sense.
But the most crucial step of CAPA is publishing those learnings internally across the entire company.
So the exact same failure never happens twice. And you can't manage a system that complex with just, like, spreadsheets.
Oh, no, definitely not.
The source material says this requires serious digital tools, quality management systems, or QMS, and integrated ERPs.
Yeah, ERPs are huge here.
You hear ERP enterprise resource planning thrown around a lot as corporate jargon.
True.
But in this context, it acts as the central nervous system of the brand.
It really does. It connects the lab results in the QMS to the inventory levels in the warehouse to the shipping docks.
Giving you real-time visibility and trend analysis.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is where modern traceability tech becomes the absolute hero of the supply chain.
Okay, let's talk about that.
We are seeing the integration of blockchain for an immutable, unchangeable record of material provenance.
Right.
We're using RFID tags for real-time stock tracking and QR codes that convey the entire product history to the end user.
Let's look at blockchain for a second, because that word gets tossed around as a buzzword a lot.
It does.
How does it actually function here, practically speaking?
Well, in a traditional system, a shady supplier could literally just Photoshop a PDF of a certificate of analysis to hide, say, a failed heavy metals test.
Just change the numbers.
Exactly. But if those lab results are automatically stamped onto a blockchain the moment the test is run in the lab.
That record cannot be altered or deleted by anyone.
Right. It locks in the truth.
That is incredible. So when a well-rehearsed CAPDA process is combined with that level of digital traceability, disruption is drastically minimized.
Absolutely.
And there's a really compelling case study about this in the guide.
Oh, the mid-size supplement brand?
Yes, this mid-sized brand was constantly putting out fires. They were facing bottlenecks, losing shipments, and failing compliance checks.
Just a mess.
Total mess. But by implementing a formal supplier scorecard, a capacity-driven improvement loop, and a quarterly supplier review cadence, they completely turned the ship around.
It's amazing what structure can do.
They actually achieved faster product launches and totally eliminated their compliance gaps.
Because they stopped reacting to chaos and built a resilient system that handled the chaos for them.
Okay, so we have built the ultimate safety net.
We have.
We've sourced the raw materials, we've run them through the testing gauntlet, we've planned for disaster.
The hard part is done.
Mostly.
Yeah.
Now, how does this invisible, highly tested powder actually become the specific branded bottle that you, the listener, ultimately buy?
This brings us to the go-to-market strategy.
Right.
And the first major fork in the road for any brand is choosing between private label and white label solutions.
So what does this all mean? Let me frame it like this.
Okay.
White labeling, that's essentially just moving into a pre-built spec house, right?
That's a really good way to put it.
The foundation is poured, the walls are up, it's fast. You slap your name on the mailbox and move in. It's a pre-developed SKU.
Yeah.
It is incredibly fast to market, but it looks exactly like your neighbor's house. You have very little differentiation.
That is a perfect analogy.
Whereas private labeling is like building a custom home from scratch. You work directly with the architects, which in this case are the formulators. You need more permits, which means intense regulatory validation.
And it takes time.
Right. The lead times are much longer, and the minimum order quantities are significantly higher.
But when the dust settles, you own a completely unique formulation under your brand that nobody else has.
Exactly.
You have to choose the path that aligns with your specific capital, your regulatory strategy, and your timeline.
And once that product is manufactured, regardless of which house you build, you have to physically move it to the customer.
And that requires 3PL's third-party logistics partners.
And we aren't talking about generic, dusty warehouses here.
Oh, definitely not.
When you are dealing with cosmetics, skincare, and dietary supplements, you need 3PLs with controlled rate storage and temperature-managed handling.
It's vital.
You can't just leave a pallet of organic probiotic skin serum sitting in a sweltering warehouse in Nevada.
It degrades the active ingredients before the customer even opens the box.
Exactly.
And speaking of opening the box, from the 3PL, the product moves into the direct-to-consumer, or D2C, dynamics.
Right.
Selling D2C drastically alters your pricing velocity, your margin structures, and your packaging considerations.
Because in D2C, the unboxing experience is quite literally part of the product.
It really is.
You need tighter packaging controls so things don't leak during transit, and you need robust post-purchase support.
And tying directly into that unboxing experience is the massive growing consumer demand for ESG, environmental, social, and governance principles.
Which is a huge factor now.
Consumers today are highly educated and demanding sustainability.
Yeah.
They want eco-friendly, shelf-ready packaging. They expect responsible sourcing, completely clean labels, and end-of-life compostability for the plastics.
It's not just a corporate buzzword to stick on a slide deck anymore. It is a hard purchasing requirement.
Absolutely.
If you use wasteful packaging, consumers will drag you on social media and just abandon your brand.
We see this exact dynamic play out in another great case study from the research.
Oh, the cosmetic line one.
Yes. A cosmetic line wanted to launch an organic, clean label serum. They initially wanted heavy glass bottles for a premium feel.
Which makes sense for aesthetics.
It does, but they realized the shipping weight and breakage rates would completely destroy their margins and their carbon footprint.
So what do?
By partnering deeply with their contract manufacturer early on, they developed a custom product using scalable, highly eco-friendly packaging.
Nice.
It perfectly balanced those beautiful D2C unboxing aesthetics with strict regulatory labeling integrity.
And because they collaborated so closely, they still maintained a compressed, fast go-to-market timeline.
That is the holy grail for a brand. Speed to market, beautiful design, and total uncompromising regulatory compliance.
When all these invisible gears mesh perfectly, the result is phenomenal.
It is a remarkable orchestration of science, logistics, and strategy.
It really is an incredible journey. Just to quickly recap the sheer scale of what we've unpacked today.
A lot.
It really is. It starts by abandoning the cheapest quote and building a living supplier dossier to calculate the true total cost of ownership.
Right.
Then, the raw materials have to survive the brutal gauntlet of the FDA CGMP 3-tier testing framework and rigorous COA validations.
Crucial step.
Then the entire operation is insulated against global disasters by the risk register and KPA processes.
Yep.
And finally, through custom formulation and temperature-controlled 3PLs, it arrives at your door. in sustainable packaging, delivering a flawless DTC unboxing experience.
The next time you pick up a clean label serum or take your morning vitamin, I really encourage you to picture that immense, invisible architecture standing behind it.
Yeah, think about the risk-adjusted sampling.
The blockchain tracking, the third-party lab testing, all of that immense effort exists just to guarantee safety and quality for you.
It's amazing.
Understanding this completely transforms a simple online purchase into a deep appreciation of modern supply chain mastery.
It changes everything. You will truly never look at a drugstore shelf the same way again.
No.
And as we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a final lingering question to mull over.
Oh, let's hear it.
We talked about how traceability technologies like blockchain and QR codes can already tell us the exact origin and testing history of a single botanical ingredient.
Right.
So how long will it be until we, as consumers, simply refuse to buy any product that doesn't come with a fully transparent, real-time digital passport of its entire journey from the soil all the way to our shelves?
That is the transparent future we are speeding toward.
It really is.
Keep questioning what's in your products and keep learning about the incredible systems that bring them to you.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.